In the late 1990s, a gripping tale of deception and audacious fraud unfolded, capturing international attention and shining a harsh spotlight on the dark underbelly of Nigerian scams. At the center of this intricate web of deceit was Emmanuel Nwude, a charismatic Nigerian businessman who orchestrated a scam involving a phantom airport, leaving the world astounded by the audacity of his criminal enterprise. Nigeria, a nation known for its rich cultural heritage and vibrant entrepreneurial spirit, has unfortunately earned a notorious reputation for being a hotbed of fraudulent activities. Against the backdrop of a struggling economy and systemic corruption, Nwude emerged as a prominent figure in Nigeria's business circles. With his charm and persuasive abilities, he possessed an uncanny knack for exploiting the vulnerabilities of unsuspecting victims. The story begins with Nwude's ingenious plan to create an imaginary airport development project. Posing as a government official and armed with a network of accomplices, he convinced a Brazilian banker named Nelson Sakaguchi that he had exclusive access to this lucrative venture. With carefully crafted false documents, forged contracts, and an aura of credibility, Nwude lured Sakaguchi into a complex web of lies and deceit. Nwude's elaborate scheme reached its climax when Sakaguchi, convinced of the airport's authenticity, agreed to pay an astounding $242 million in various fees and expenses associated with the project. As the funds poured in, the scam seemed foolproof, but little did Nwude know that suspicions were starting to arise. Diligent investigators, fueled by growing skepticism, began to peel back the layers of Nwude's intricate fraud. The more they delved into the details, the clearer it became that the proposed airport project was nothing more than an elaborate ruse. What started as an illusionary dream morphed into an international scandal that would rock the world. Ultimately, the truth could not be hidden, and Nwude's empire of lies came crashing down. Arrested and brought to justice, Nwude faced the consequences of his audacious actions. The trial that followed not only exposed the inner workings of his scam, but also sent shockwaves throughout Nigeria and beyond. The Phantom Airport. Unraveling the Nigerian scam explores the fascinating and complex story of Emmanuel Nwude and his grand illusion. This documentary delves into the rise of scams in Nigeria, the art of deception employed by Nwude, the unraveling of the truth, and the impact of this remarkable case on the fight against fraud. Join us on this captivating journey as we peel back the layers of one of the most notorious scams in history, examining the human capacity for deceit and the lessons learned from the Nigerian scam that reverberate to this day. Emmanuel Nwude, the mastermind behind the Phantom Airport scam, was born in Nigeria in the mid-1950s. Raised in a modest family, Nwude's upbringing reflected the economic challenges faced by many in the country at the time. While specific details about his early life are limited, it is believed that he hailed from the southeastern region of Nigeria. Growing up in an environment marked by limited opportunities and widespread poverty, Nwude displayed an entrepreneurial spirit from a young age. As he navigated his way through the challenging economic landscape, he sought to find unconventional avenues for success. Nwude's journey into the world of scams and fraud is believed to have begun in the 1980s, a period when Nigeria was grappling with economic instability and political corruption. With a combination of intelligence, charisma, and a keen understanding of human psychology, he quickly became adept at exploiting the vulnerabilities of unsuspecting individuals. It is said that Nwude surrounded himself with a network of like-minded individuals who were instrumental in the execution of his fraudulent schemes. Together, they orchestrated elaborate plans that often involved impersonating government officials, creating false documents, and establishing a facade of legitimacy to deceive their victims. Nwude's smooth-talking and persuasive nature allowed him to gain the trust of his targets, making them more susceptible to his scams. Over time, his reputation as a successful businessman grew, drawing in more victims and expanding his criminal empire. I'm sure you're itching to know how he pulled off this one well. Let me tell you how. Emmanuel Nwude, the mastermind behind the Phantom Airport scam, possessed a crucial advantage that greatly aided in the execution of this fraudulent scheme. Before this scam, Nwude had held a prominent position as a director at the Union Bank of Nigeria. This banking background provided him with invaluable access to privileged knowledge, documentation, and influential connections, enhancing his credibility and effectiveness in carrying out an elaborate fraud. Having worked within the banking industry, Nwude was well versed in the intricacies of financial transactions, regulations, and procedures. This insider knowledge allowed him to navigate the business landscape with ease and present himself as a seasoned professional. His experience as a bank director instilled in him a certain confidence and a refined demeanor, qualities that played a pivotal role in establishing trust and putting his victims at ease. Nwude's familiarity with banking practices and protocols also gave him the ability to fabricate convincing documents and create an illusion of legitimacy around the Phantom Airport project. Armed with the knowledge of the inner workings of the financial sector, he strategically manipulated financial transactions, forged contracts, and produced intricate paperwork to deceive his victims. His understanding of banking operations enabled him to craft an intricate web of deceit, making it difficult for his victims to detect the fraudulent nature of the scheme. Moreover, Nwude's background as a bank director likely afforded him access to influential individuals within the banking and business communities. These connections may have played a significant role in establishing his initial contact with potential victims and further enhancing his credibility. His association with the Union Bank of Nigeria, a reputable financial institution, lent an air of authority and respectability to his persona, allowing him to exploit the trust and confidence placed in him by his unsuspecting targets. Emmanuel Nwude's criminal scheme involved assuming the identity of Paul Ogwuma, the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, in order to gain credibility and establish connections with potential victims. Nwude enlisted the help of several accomplices, including Emmanuel Ofolu, Obum Osakwe, and Zaribe Okoli, and a married couple known as the Ikechukwas. With his false identity in place and the assistance of his associates, Nwude set his sights on Nelson Sakaguchi, the director of the Brazilian bank, Banco Noroeste. Through careful planning and execution, Nwude and his co-conspirators successfully made contact with Sakaguchi, using their fabricated identities and fraudulent documentation to build trust and credibility. The use of Paul Ogwuma's identity proved to be a particularly effective tactic in convincing Sakaguchi of the legitimacy of the Phantom Airport project. As governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Ogwuma held considerable authority and respect within the Nigerian financial sector, and his endorsement of the project was seen as a significant validation of its credibility. Nwude and his accomplices used this association to their advantage, forging official documents and contracts that purported to be endorsed by Ogwuma himself. The use of such sophisticated forgery and manipulation of official documentation created an illusion of legitimacy that effectively deceived Sakaguchi and other victims, leading them to invest millions of dollars into the non-existent project. Emmanuel Nwude strategically approached Nelson Sakaguchi, the director of Banco Noroeste, with an enticing proposition that would seemingly benefit both the Brazilian bank and the Nigerian economy. Nwude pitched the idea of investing in the construction of a new airport in Abuja, Nigeria's capital, as a means to foster economic growth and development in the country. To entice Sakaguchi further, Nwude dangled the promise of a substantial commission. He informed Sakaguchi that, should the deal succeed, he would personally receive a lucrative payout of $10 million as a commission for his involvement. This enticing offer caught Sakaguchi's attention, and he became increasingly intrigued by the potential financial gains. Falling prey to the scam, Sakaguchi proceeded to transfer vast sums of money to Nwude and his co-conspirators. Between 1995 and 1998, he paid a staggering $191 million in cash to the fraudsters. Additionally, to cover the remaining portion of the funds, Sakaguchi included $51 million in outstanding interest owed by Banco Norost. Unknown to Sakaguchi, the entire investment was based on falsehoods and deceit. The promised airport development project was nothing more than an elaborate fabrication, and the funds transferred by Sakaguchi served only to enrich Nwude and his associates. With such meticulous planning and strategies, one may think they actually got away with it, but nature has its way of bringing evil under the sun. Let me tell you, they got exposed. The unraveling of the Phantom Airport scam gained momentum when Banco Santander, a Spanish bank, expressed its intention to acquire Banco Norost, the Brazilian bank involved in the fraudulent scheme. In August 1997, as part of the acquisition process, thorough investigations into Banco Norost's financial records were initiated. During this period, numerous board meetings between the Spanish and Brazilian banks were held to discuss the details of the potential takeover. It was during these deliberations that top officials from Banco Santander raised concerns regarding the allocation of a significant portion of Banco Norost's capital. Specifically, they questioned why nearly half of the bank's funds were being held in an unprotected account located in the Cayman Islands. This discovery sparked further scrutiny and raised suspicions about the integrity of Banco Norost's financial practices. The revelation of such a substantial amount of money being stored in an offshore account without proper safeguards triggered alarm bells within the acquiring bank. As the investigation progressed, it became increasingly evident that the funds held in the Cayman Islands account were linked to the Phantom Airport scam, masterminded by Emmanuel Nwude. The true nature of the fraud began to unfold, exposing the fraudulent activities and the extent of the financial deception perpetrated by Nwude and his associates. The involvement of Banco Santander, a reputable international bank, in the acquisition process added an additional layer of credibility to the investigation. It amplified the significance of the findings and solidified the need for further action to be taken against those responsible for the fraudulent scheme. The discovery of the significant funds allocated to an unprotected account in the Cayman Islands, coupled with the realization that no new airport had been constructed in Abuja, raised serious concerns that could not be adequately explained. As a result, formal investigations were launched into the matter, involving multiple jurisdictions such as Brazil, Nigeria, Switzerland, and England. The investigations extended beyond uncovering the truth behind the Phantom Airport scam. Criminal probes were initiated to delve into the fraudulent activities, seeking justice for the victims and holding those responsible accountable for their actions. Amidst these investigations, an extraordinary turn of events unfolded. In a bid to salvage the sale of the Brazilian bank, the owners were compelled to cover the substantial shortfall of $242 million from their own personal funds. This desperate measure was undertaken to ensure the completion of the bank's sale and to mitigate the severe financial repercussions that loomed over the institution. However, despite the owners' efforts to rectify the missing funds, the consequences of the Phantom Airport scam proved insurmountable. The weight of the financial burden, coupled with the growing public scrutiny and loss of confidence, eventually led to the collapse of the Brazilian bank. The repercussions were felt not only by the institution itself, but also by its customers, employees, and the broader financial landscape. The collapse of the bank underscored the magnitude of the scam and the far-reaching consequences it had on both individuals and the financial system. It served as a sobering reminder of the devastating impact that fraudulent schemes can have and highlighted the importance of robust regulatory measures, international cooperation, and effective oversight to prevent such fraudulent activities from occurring in the future. Despite the occurrence of the scam between 1995 and 1998, legal proceedings against Emmanuel Nwude and his accomplices were not initiated until 2004. The intricate nature of the case necessitated specialized investigations, causing a significant delay in bringing the perpetrators to court. With the establishment of the EFCC, a dedicated body was tasked with addressing economic and financial crimes, including the high-profile fraud orchestrated by Nwude and his associates. The agency focused on assembling a team of specialists and experts capable of delving into the intricate details of the case. Under the leadership of the EFCC, the criminal investigations gained momentum. The agency collaborated with other law enforcement agencies, both domestically and internationally, to gather evidence, pursue leads, and ensure a thorough examination of the scam's complexities. The involvement of the EFCC brought renewed hope for justice and served as a deterrent against future fraudulent activities. The protracted duration between the scam's occurrence and the initiation of legal proceedings demonstrated the challenging nature of such cases and the need for comprehensive investigations. The establishment of the EFCC marked a significant milestone in Nigeria's fight against corruption, signaling the government's commitment to upholding the rule of law and holding perpetrators accountable. Initially, they entered pleas of not guilty, attempting to deny their involvement in the elaborate criminal scheme. However, the defense strategy began to crumble when one of the fraudsters decided to come clean and confess to their participation in the scam. The confession dealt a significant blow to the credibility of the accused, undermining their collective claims of innocence. Despite the mounting evidence and the confession of his accomplice, Emmanuel Nwude resorted to a desperate attempt to evade justice. He tried to bribe the chairman of the EFCC with a sum of $75,000 in a bid to manipulate the course of the legal proceedings. However, his nefarious scheme backfired when the chairman staunchly refused the bribe, unyielding in his commitment to upholding the principles of justice and integrity. This ill-fated bribery attempt only served to further incriminate Emmanuel Nwude, as additional charges of bribery were promptly added to his already extensive list of offenses. The failed bribe reinforced the seriousness of his crimes and underscored the audacity with which he sought to undermine the legal process. As the trial progressed, the weight of the evidence, including the confession and the attempted bribery, became increasingly insurmountable for Emmanuel Nwude and his co-accused. Their defense crumbled under the weight of the incriminating facts, leaving them little room to maintain their pleas of innocence. As the trial unfolded, the prosecution achieved a significant breakthrough by securing the testimony of Nelson Sikaguchi, the individual who had fallen victim to the elaborate scam and had made substantial payments for a non-existent airport. His first-hand account provided crucial evidence that strengthened the case against Emmanuel Nwude and the remaining members of his crew. In light of the compelling testimony and mounting evidence, Emmanuel and his associates eventually abandoned their pleas of innocence and pleaded guilty to the charges brought against them. This pivotal moment marked their acknowledgement of responsibility for their involvement in the fraudulent scheme. However, the subsequent sentencing and monetary penalty imposed on Emmanuel Nwude raised eyebrows due to its seemingly disproportionate nature. Despite defrauding a bank of over $200 million, the sentence handed down to him was a relatively lenient 5 years in prison. Moreover, the ordered fine of $10 million, while substantial in isolation, appeared insignificant when juxtaposed with the magnitude of the fraud. Critics pointed out that the imposed fine may have been a mere drop in the ocean for Emmanuel, given the colossal sums involved in the scam. It raised questions about the adequacy of the punishment and whether it truly reflected the severity of the offense committed. The disparity between the financial loss inflicted and the monetary penalty imposed left many perplexed and sparked debates about the effectiveness of the legal system in dealing with such high-profile cases. The story of Emmanuel Nwude and the Ghost Airport scam is a remarkable one, not only because of the amount of money involved, but also because of the sheer audacity of the fraud. Nwude, a former director of the Union Bank of Nigeria, was able to use his connections and knowledge to orchestrate an elaborate scam that tricked a Brazilian bank into paying almost $242 million for a non-existent airport in Abuja, Nigeria. Despite the complexity of the case and the various jurisdictions involved, the Nigerian government was eventually able to bring Nwude and his accomplices to justice. The establishment of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, under President Obasanjo played a crucial role in this process. Nwude and his associates faced over 100 counts of fraud and bribery-related charges and were eventually found guilty. While Nwude received a relatively light sentence of 5 years in prison and a $10 million fine, the case remains a landmark one in Nigeria's fight against corruption. It sent a strong message that those who engage in such fraudulent activities will be held accountable for their actions. The Phantom Airport scam also highlights the need for increased vigilance in the banking industry and the importance of robust regulatory frameworks to prevent such scams from happening in the future. The case serves as a reminder that even those in positions of power and authority can be susceptible to greed and corruption, and that no one is above the law. If you love this video, be sure to hit the like button, and don't forget to share with friends too.